Hello, welcome back to Crash Course Metal, the Def Leppard years. We started this series out with an episode we called On Through the 80s. It covered On Through the Night and their real early history, the EP, all of that stuff, right? We walked you through onto High and Dry when they started working with Mutt, Lange, and even on to Pyromania where they just exploded to tremendous heights. Thankfully to MTV in large part, right? But, there was a different thing going on right before MTV landed, right? It was just old school. It was just straight hand-to-hand combat. In 1980, there was no internet. And in 1980, there was no social media. There was no cell phones. There was none of this means of communication or media, right? So in 1980, Def Leppard was doing it the hard way, the old school way, just rubber to the road, touring like crazy. We mentioned in the last episode that AC/DC, Ted Nugent, they were out on the road continuously supporting these new albums and just their music, right? They had already really done very well in the UK and were very well known throughout Europe, but they needed to conquer the United States. High and Dry was going to be instrumental in doing that for them. And but before that, again, they had to depend on word of mouth, magazines, tours, FM radio, and just build up a loyal fan base through like literally a mailing list and a fan club. But they did it. It worked, and they grew to tremendous heights. To come here in the next series with Pyromania, you'll see how big they became, and that wasn't even the biggest that they are. They became even bigger than that. But we're going to focus on High and Dry today. We want to dive in a little deeper, fill in just a little tidbits here and there, and just kind of give you our ideas on what we remember from that time. Because it was a very inspirational time in music. Def Leppard, when they came out with High and Dry, that was an energy-filled, like high-octane AC/DC to the next level. And everybody who was a metal fan was definitely into High and Dry. So let's get into that one. As I mentioned before, in the early 80s, bands were doing it the old school way, touring, magazines, radio, all the old stuff. You could call it analog, if you will, because there was definitely not much digital going on at that time. The closest thing to digital that was about to happen and did happen in 1981 was that MTV came on the scene. And MTV absolutely changed music forever. In the 80s especially, but I mean, just in general, it was a new era for music. You're seeing your biggest stars in videos that became movies at some point, So the video production started to really get scaled up, and so these bands just started to turn into even just stars in a different way, because they're now like almost movie stars on this MTV platform that nobody's ever seen before. But Def Leppard definitely capitalized on what MTV was, and lucky for those guys at the time, there wasn't a lot of heavy metal. I remember when MTV first came on, I remember seeing Run to the Hills, Iron Maiden, and I just remember I was a little kid and I was just laughing because they'd had Indians and they're getting, the cowboys were chasing them, and it was just kind of a slapstick video, but it was definitely cool for like 1981. I remember being glued to the TV watching that. But there wasn't a lot of metal, most importantly. So when Def Leppard had this brand new, squeaky clean, super awesome album, they made sure they made several, videos for it. And so High and Dry really got a big booster engine lift, I'd say, from MTV. Bringin On the Heartbreak, I remember that used to be on all the time. High and Dry Saturday Night, that was on all the time. Let It Go, these were all songs that you would see. Like on MTV, they didn't have that many songs in the beginning. They didn't have that many videos in the beginning. Most bands in 1980, 81, they just made the album, and maybe they put out cassettes. There weren't even CDs really yet. And so nobody was really making videos. So when MTV first landed, there was only quite a few bands, a select few bands that had seen foresight in this and started to create music videos. And so the bands that had music videos were the ones that were getting played. And I must admit, I'd see a Def Leppard video probably every 2 to 3 hours. It wasn't uncommon to see either the same song again or another one. Hell, we used to wait for it, and that way we could record it on our VCR and have a copy of it and actually get to, oh wait, is that legal? Never mind, all good, don't worry about it, didn't happen. But, that's the kind of stuff you had to do back then. If you wanted to see music when you wanted to see it, you had to make your own internet. You had to record it on a cassette. You had to record it on a videotape. Totally different time. Nothing like now. We are so spoiled now in the music world. We get to go online at any point in time, YouTube, wherever we want to go, and we just push a couple of buttons and tell it what we want to hear for hours on end, and it's just going to keep playing it for you. We didn't have that luxury back in the day. We had vinyl, or we had cassettes, or even 8 tracks for some people, and you had to, it was a physical effort to hear music, and it was cool. I mean, you get an album, it was exciting, there was artwork, there was a lot in the packaging and the presentation of an album. Every album was an experience. That's what I really remember about High and Dry and this time period in general. Is just every experience, every time I saw a new song or a new album, it was exciting, it was awesome. And Def Leppard definitely always brought the energy. But the release of Bringin On the Heartbreak, that was really just a huge success for them because it was a slower song, so it wasn't just a super hard rocker. It showed that they could do more. It had depth, right? It was a little more somber. But it wasn't just the music that propelled Bringin On the Heartbreak. Again, like I said, it was one of the first videos played on MTV. But that exposure, hands down, just catapulted them onto the world stage now. It wasn't just the UK, it was the United States. It was all of the world. Anywhere that you could get MTV, that's where Def Leppard was. And at that time, that means they were everywhere. In the beginning, despite all the exposure, Bringin On the Heartbreak didn't even initially chart on the Billboard Hot 100. Obviously, that just means the Billboard 100 doesn't know what they're doing, because why wouldn't High and Dry be on the Billboard Top 100? That's kind of weird. But it ultimately did peak out at number 61 on the Hot 100 chart after being remixed, and that wasn't until 1984. And probably due to the success of Pyromania, they were able to squeaky clean up that mix, remaster it, get it back out there, and kind of reignite it. It did. I remember when that album kind of got a second go. I remember starting to see Bringin On the Heartbreak again on MTV, and I was just wondering, why are they playing this again? And it was because they had done a remaster, a remix of it in 1984, and that's the first time it actually charted. And it was significant for Def Leppard because they're just always just a hard rock band, metal band, new wave of British heavy metal, right? And a lot of metal bands don't get taken that seriously, but when you start to chart on the billboards and you're starting to bring real numbers, millions of albums sold, now you're a commodity to a record label and stuff like that. And so it was very evident that they were about to get to a higher place very soon after this album was released, and once they were on to their next album, Pyromania, you could tell that it was going to be another plateau for them, and it was. All right, guys, before I hand this thing over to Ed, I just want to remind you, please subscribe to our channel. Hey, hit that like button, comment, share it with a friend, your mom, whoever. We're very family friendly, as a matter of fact, so share it with whoever you like. And, I look forward to seeing you guys again. We're going to keep going with this story. I'm going to hand it over to Ed right now.
Def Leppard started to have tensions that were rising during the recording of High and Dry. Pete Willis, despite their success with On Through the Night and High and Dry, and everything going around at that time, Pete Willis was starting to create a problem. When you're in a band, you have to get along. You are on tour together. You're in a bus together 24/7. And especially when you're recording with your producer, it all has to come together. Sure, they were partying, but Pete took it to the next level and started to become unreliable, and it started to affect his performance. His behavior and his performance and reliability during these recording sessions started to come to the top, especially with Mutt, Lange. And they bled over to their sessions with Pyromania. With the release of High and Dry, Def Leppard expanded their touring reach. They went to the US and Canada. They supported bands, acts like Ozzy Osbourne, Blackfoot, and Pat Travers. Public reception was tremendous. They loved it. Fans and critics alike. Critics not easy. Fans, they were unforgiving too sometimes, but they won. They did it. They killed it. Paving the way for their future, their success, making them one of the biggest bands in the 1980s. Thank you for tuning into this Crash Course Metal episode where we cover one of the most relevant heavy metal bands of the 80s, Def Leppard. We are currently producing our last episode of the Def Leppard story, the Hysteria years, but be sure to check out our previous episodes, On Through the 80s, the High and Dry years, and the Pyromania story. We also cover an unauthorized album that was released by their former manager called First Strike. So go back and check those out. But before we go, We want to thank everyone for watching, as well as your awesome and entertaining comments. Love to get them. If you haven't yet, please like and subscribe to our channel so you know when we put out our latest episodes. Lastly, we want to put a big thank you out to coastlinemall.com. They have awesome hard rock and heavy metal t-shirts. It's promo code CRASH. You buy one, you get one for half off for all of our Crash Course Metal fans. Again, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.